Welcome to the November 8th, 2021 meeting of the Sandusky City Commission. We'll have an invocation offered by Commissioner Poole, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
For the invocation, I'd like a moment of silence for a longtime Sandusky resident, Greg Sherman, who was also a long-term financial analyst for the city of Sandusky. Lord, we come together today asking for guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of community. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Myers, will you call the roll?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Waddington?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Meinzer?
Here.
Mr. Poole?
Here.
Mr. Murray?
Here.
Mr. Brady?
Here.
Ms. Twine?
Here.
Commissioners, you have before you the minutes of our meeting of October 25th, 2021. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Waddington.
I move that we accept the minutes of the October 25th meeting and dispense with the formal reading.
Second.
Got a motion and a second discussion? Without objection, the motion will be approved. And hearing no objection, that motion is approved. Are there any residents in the audience that have questions or comments pertaining to tonight's agenda?
Greetings, everyone. Tom Lamarca, 206 48th Street. Congratulations to Mr. Murray, Mr. Brady, and Mr. Pajali on your victorious wins on commission seats last week. My question is regarding the liquor permit for Shoreline Inc. at 129 Columbus Avenue. And I'm just curious as to where that really is. Which building, which storefront? Thanks.
The question will be addressed as we come to that legislation. Any additional questions from the audience pertaining to tonight's agenda?
I'm new to this. I live on Cleveland Road. There's a business plaza across the street from my house at the old Bayshore Counseling. And it's just been starting to be leased out to people. And I don't know who's in the place, but it looks like a couple of units in the back, people are living in it. But Saturday night, the 30th, my girlfriend will.
Sir, I don't mean to interrupt you. but-
Okay, I don't know when.
Yeah, I
Okay.
understand. We have a section at the end of our meeting
Okay.
for comments regarding any city
Like I said,
business.
I'm new to this.
This is,
Okay.
this is meant to be just agenda items, so we can deal with those first, then we'll go through the agenda, and then we get to you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. Additional comments regarding agenda items?
Okay. I got you now.
Yep. If not, we have the pleasure of swearing in a new firefighter. So, Mr. Webster, the floor is yours with Chief Green.
Oh.
I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand, and then I'll bring this up in a few places, just follow along, and then repeat after me. So please raise your right hand. I, Lorenzo Laviana, recognizing my fundamental duty as a firefighter of the City of Sandusky Fire Department, do solemnly swear to uphold the standards of my profession by safeguarding the lives and property of our citizens against the threat of fire and disaster.
I, Renzo Laviana, recognizing my fundamental duty as a firefighter of the City of Sandusky Fire Department, do solemnly swear to uphold the standards of my profession by safeguarding the lives and property of our citizens against the threat of fire and disaster.
I promise to obey the duly constituted laws of the United States of America, the state of Ohio, the City of Sandusky, to accept the badge of my office as a symbol of public faith, leadership, and trust to be honored for as long as I remain a firefighter of the City of Sandusky Fire Department.
I promise to obey the duly constituted laws of the United States of America, the state of Ohio, the City of Sandusky, and to accept the badge of my office as a symbol of public faith, leadership, and trust to be honored for as long as I remain a firefighter of the City of Sandusky Fire Department.
I will continually strive to serve our communities and be an influence for good for my fellow officers and firefighters to the best of my ability, so help me.
I will continually strive to serve our community and to be an influence for good before my fellow officers and firefighters to the best of my ability, so help me. Congratulations.
It always occurs to me when we swear in firemen and policemen that they all seem so young. And Mr. Murray would comment that everyone is young compared to me. Thank you, Lorenzo, for taking a chance on us and for taking this position. We count on you to uphold the high standards that we have already established with our Sandusky Fire Department. You are starting off in a great tradition. We have on our agenda a public hearing on proposed amendments to the zone map for 1035 Hancock Street. Our Community Development Director, Jonathan Holliday, will conduct this public hearing, and as such, there will be an opportunity for public comment and commissioner comment at the conclusion of his presentation. Mr. Holliday, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Commissioner. Tonight's public hearing is on the rezoning of the property at 1035 Hancock Street. This application was submitted by AmeriHome LLC, and it was reviewed and recommended for approval by our Planning Commission on September 22nd. The request is to rezone the property from local business district to our residential business district. The purpose for this rezoning is to allow the property to be used for transient rental purposes. I'll note that the local business district is our only district, our only business district that does not currently allow transient occupancy. This is a conversation we've been having recently with the Planning Commission, and as a staff are taking a close look at a recommendation to change that for the local business district to allow transient occupancy in that district. We noticed that there's a number of primarily historic buildings along our commercial corridors that could really benefit from the ability to being able to do transient occupancy. But in any event, as the code currently stands, local business does not allow transient occupancy. So these property owners are requesting the rezoning to residential business so that that is an option for their property. This map shows the current zoning around the property. The property is identified here in red. You can see that to the north of the property is local business district zoned properties. Across the street there is the commercial zoned properties, and to the south is the residential two-family zoned properties. So in this case, residential business would make for a nice transitional district between the residential properties to the south and the business properties to the north. You can see also in this picture that the property is currently improved with two structures labeled number 1 and number 2. The structure to the north, labeled number 1, is a single-family home, and the property to the south, the structure to the south, labeled number 2, is a 3-story multifamily building. This is a picture of the multifamily building before it was renovated. Under the current ownership, the owners, Mr. and Mrs. Torres, have done an extensive renovation on the property. If you've been by there recently, you would definitely notice the difference. It really looks fantastic. The property is a 3-story building measuring a total of 4,800 square feet. Each floor is approximately 1,600 square feet, and each floor is improved as one residential dwelling unit. And this is a floor plan of each of the 3 floors. In conclusion, we did review the bicentennial plan and find this request to be consistent with the recommendations of the bicentennial plan, specifically that it helps to repurpose a vacant building, and it supports the development of a variety of housing types, including short-term transient rental here in our community. So as a staff, we are recommending approval of this rezoning request. I'll mention that Mr. and Mrs. Torres are here with us this evening, and I know they, as long as as myself, would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Any public comments regarding this hearing? Yes, sir. If you'll come to the microphone, sir, if you come to the microphone, identify yourself and give us an address for our record, we'll hear your comments.
Good afternoon. My name is Richard Howe. My wife and I live at 1124 Wayne Street. It's a block away from the people's, I congratulate people what they did for that building. And I'm 100% behind changing for them, because when you do make them happy there, they may buy another one and do the same thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Any additional public comments? Commissioners' comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Waddington.
I drove by it a lot, and I go down that route or by that building for the last several years. The big thing I like, the building's beautiful, but the parking lot was a knockout, so they got access to parking. I don't know if that was brought up. I don't think that was brought up, but there's plenty of parking in the rear of it. But the building looks fabulous as far as what it was. We all know driving by there several years ago. So.
Additional comments or questions, Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Meisner?
I'd like to thank the Torreses as well. I pre-planned that building 2-3 decades ago, and it was stacked full of mattresses, the whole first floor. I just figured it was getting ready to be torched. So, and it's been a beautiful building, so thank you. They saved it, and it really looks great.
Additional comments, Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Harris?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I think we all, would probably agree, and it's obvious through their commitment to the city. I mean, even as far as, them developing a new home for themselves, as well as, again, their commitment just to their investment throughout the city. As many of us might know, this isn't just their own, or their loan property, if you would. So, I think we should just simply, give them the opportunity to make the most of their investment and contribution to the city. So,
Mr. Pajali?
Mr. Chairman, I would echo all the comments around the table and also Mr. Howe's earlier comment. I don't think the building could be in better hands. Mr. Torres he's got some property close to me, and he does a fine job. So I think he'll do a fine job with this, maybe only second to Mr. Meitzer and his transient rent units.
It's obvious that you're getting a lot of love here today, I'll say that. I will tell you this, that I looked at the property when it was for sale more than a year, maybe 2 years ago now, and it was a ton of work. And I saw it as a ton of work. You have poured a ton of money and work into this property. So it was more than my family wanted to take on, but I give you very high marks for taking it on. You've turned what could have very easily been considered a blighted piece of property into a really wonderful piece of property, and no longer a fire hazard, as Mr. Meisner has pointed out. So thanks for doing that. If there are no additional comments, I'll declare this public hearing closed. Commissioners, you have before you several communications from staff recommending various legislation. Can I have a motion to accept these communications?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second discussion.
One question. I had the same question that Mr. Lamarca had. If the property is directly with this to receive the liquor license, which is item C, is directly across from my building, I would need to have that moved to the regular agenda. I just don't know what the address is. Can we? It looked to me like it was inside the Hography building. Is anybody able to pinpoint where it is to that?
Is it listed as 129?
It is, and which is kind of a vague address.
Mr. Whoops, are you familiar with that?
Yeah, through the commission president to Commissioner Murray, my understanding is that this is the building that is owned by Gary and Diane Ackerman. That Fabulous Female is in. There's a rear space that is available for a restaurant in that space, and they had a license, I believe, in the Feddersen building when they owned that, and were able to move the license to this building in anticipation of potentially leasing or operating a business in the back of that space.
Thank you. That addresses my concerns.
Without objection, the motion will be approved. And hearing no objection, that motion is approved. Commissioners, we have 9 items on our consent agenda this evening. Mr. Murray, is it no longer necessary to move that item that you spoke of?
Correct. Thank you.
Any commissioners wish to move any other items from the consent agenda to the regular agenda? Ms. Myers, will you present the consent agenda, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Item A, Chapter 1157, Flood Damage Reduction Amendments, second reading. Item B, purchase of chemicals for 2022 at Big Island Waterworks and Water Pollution Control Plants. Item C, new liquor permit for Shoreline LLC. Item D, purchase and sale agreement through land utilization program. Item E, consulting contract with George Polis for calendar year 2022. Item F, consulting contract with Robert Statler for calendar year 2022. Item G, permission to dispose of unneeded items. Item H, serving our seniors vehicle lease. Item I, serving our seniors contract for transportation services.
Commissioners, having heard these ordinances and liquor permit hearing requests, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Meisner.
I make a motion to accept the consent agenda items A through I and declare that all ordinances as drafted and presented to the City Commission under the consent agenda shall take effect in accordance with the reflected ordinance and/or resolution, whether it be with Section 13 or Section 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Discussion. Ms. Myers, will you poll the commission on the motion, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Now on the ordinances and request for liquor permit hearing.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Those ordinances and liquor permit hearing is passed. We will turn to our regular agenda. Ms. Myers, will you present item number 1, please?
It is requested that an ordinance be passed amending Part 1 of the Administrative Code, Title 9, Taxation, by adoption of new Chapter 189 Parking Occupancy Tax of the codified ordinances in the manner and way specifically set forth herein below. This is a second reading.
As this is a second reading, Commissioners, we do not require a motion. We'll move right to the discussion phase of this. So discussion regarding this piece of legislation.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Poole.
same thing I brought up at the last meeting. I need to support this, a way to exclude tow truck operators. This legislation was built around the concept of Cedar Point paying for things that we essentially as taxpayers are sending directly back to Cedar Point. I don't want unnecessarily middle-class working people to be caught up in this and the administrative expense of doing it. And it's written specific, I just need to have that addressed, supposed to have that addressed. The law director was going to look at it, wonder what he did.
So let me, Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Murray.
if I may, I don't think that the way it's currently worded would affect tow truck operators. I think they impose a charge as opposed to a parking fee. But I would be perfectly happy to make a motion to amend the legislation to exempt tow truck operators from storage fees.
Second.
Got a motion and a second? Ms. Myers, will you call a roll on that motion?
Yes. Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
That piece of legislation is amended to exempt tow truck drivers. Back to the discussion on item number 1. Any additional discussion on item number 1?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Meinzer.
I just want to clarify, since the tow truck drivers came up, I just thought this was a contract with Cedar Point. So this does not affect like school football parking and charity parking and those type of things, right? Correct? Am I correct?
Through the commission president to Commissioner Meinzer, and Director Heil is on and can potentially weigh in on this. It applies, it's not exclusive to Cedar Point. It applies to for-profit businesses that charge for parking. It does not apply to residential. It doesn't, including apartment buildings. It does not apply to nonprofits or governmental agencies, which would exclude the schools or those sorts of things. But if a commercial business, as part of a commercial activity, is charging for parking, they would pay the tax.
So, thank you.
Additional questions, Commissioners? Ms. Myers, will you call the roll on the ordinance, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
That ordinance is passed. Ms. Myers, will you present item number 2, please?
This is the second reading as well. It is requested an ordinance be passed amending Part 1 Administrative Code, Title 9 Taxation, Chapter 195 Admissions Tax of the codified ordinances in a manner and way specifically set herein below.
Commissioners, this again is a second reading, and as such, we do not require a motion to entertain this legislation. We'll move directly to the discussion phase on this legislation.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Murray.
there was an email sent around to all of the commissioners earlier this week. It was late last week. I don't remember now when it was. But this agreement with Cedar Fair and the expansion of the admissions tax was negotiated by very high-level executives at Cedar Fair. Once this came, and that was kept confidential for obvious reasons as the negotiations continued. But once this rolled out, the folks who have the duty on a day-to-day basis to collect the admissions tax and remit the admissions tax had some concerns which they brought to the city. They are 7 weeks away from a new fiscal year. So they said, look, don't touch the tax. Leave the tax at 8%, but we'd like a year to be able to evaluate the changes in the administrative way that the tax is collected and remitted. So we did make some significant changes that were not reviewed at the Cedar Fair end with some folks who are charged with implementing it. They've simply asked that we delay the changes to the administrative side for a year while they have a chance to put in place appropriate procedures and determine whether we might need to make some recommendations for changes to legislation. So I would make a motion to amend the legislation in the manner set forth in the amendment that was shared earlier with the commission, essentially delaying the changes to the administrative portion of the legislation, but keeping the tax fully at 8%.
Second.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Ms. Myers, will you call roll on the motion, please? Go, madam.
Yes. Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
That motion to amend is passed. We'll return now to discussion on legislation number 2. Any additional discussion on that item? Ms. Myers, will you call roll on that ordinance, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
That ordinance is passed. Ms. Myers, will you present item number 3?
It is requested an ordinance be passed amending the official zone map of the City of Sandusky to rezone parcel number 57-02118.000 located at 1035 Hancock Street from LB Local Business District to RRB Residential Business District, and declaring that this ordinance shall take effect under the suspension of the rules is contained in and in accordance with Section 13 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 13 of the city charter.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Discussion. I think we ran out of love on this during the public hearing, I guess. Ms. Myers, will you call a roll on this ordinance, please?
Yes, Mr. President.
Excuse me on the motion, please.
Yes. Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
That ordinance passes under Section 13. Ms. Myers, will you present item number 4, please?
It is requested an ordinance be passed authorizing and directing the city manager and/or the finance director to expend funds to Gherkin Paving Incorporated of Napoleon, Ohio, for emergency roadway repair services and materials on Cedar Point Drive in the amount of $31,361.34, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Mr. Klein, this work was accomplished so long ago, most of us have forgotten what happened or what it was about. Perhaps you can refresh our memory of what we owe these people this money for?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. As you guys probably all recall, on Cedar Point Drive, just north of 5th Street, just south of 1st Street, there was a water main break back at the end of August, and the traffic immediately started using 1st and 5th, and that neighborhood back in there started going around River Avenue. So what happened was the pavement, the entire width of the roadway had just seen some massive deterioration because the water was pushing up through the concrete slabs. So we had to bring them in and do the work. Unfortunately, it's been 2.5 months. These guys really want to get paid for work that was done 2.5 months ago, but we have now dotted all our I's, crossed our T's, have all the documentation that we needed to make sure that these numbers were accurate. When you're talking $31,000 for a water main break, that's not the normal pavement repairs. That's not the normal cost for the asphalt. So in this case, it was obviously exceeded the $10,000 limit, so we had to come to commission to get this fixed.
Questions or comments, Commissioners? Ms. Myers, will call roll on the motion, please.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
And Ms. Twine.
Yes.
That ordinance is passed. Ms. Myers, you present item number 5, please.
It is requested an ordinance be passed authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into a contract with All Phase Power and Lighting Incorporated of Sandusky, Ohio, for the Columbus Avenue Lift Station Improvement Project, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioner, having heard this ordinance, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Harris.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Ms. Myers, will you call roll on the motion, please?
Yes. Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole? Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
That ordinance is passed. Ms. Myers, you present the next item on the agenda.
It is requested an ordinance be passed authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into a fourth amendment to the Transportation Services Agreement between the City of Sandusky and First Transit Incorporated of Cincinnati, Ohio, in relation to the Sandusky Transit System.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Murray.
I will just take this opportunity to reiterate how terribly important public transit is to our community. I mean, it provides a critical link for people to get to jobs, to get to education, to get to health care. We are the only local government that provides this service, and we do it in we do it for the entire community, I think it's a great benefit. I'm hopeful that we will eventually see additional partners out in Erie County participating in this. But for now, and for many years now, I've been happy to support public transit. We look at, we look at the challenges today, and Mr. Wilpster and I were talking about this earlier. We look at the challenge that are facing workforce participation these days. If we didn't have Sandusky Transit, we would have much more challenges than we do today. There are other aspects of workforce participation, including childcare, that are incredibly important to address. There are aspects in the nonprofit world that are working on that in nonprofit world in Erie County right now to make a long-term difference. But this is important for economic development, and so I just wanted to highlight that. So thank you.
Additional comments, Commissioners? Ms. Myers, will you call roll on the motion, please?
Yes. Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
That ordinance is passed. Ms. Myers, you present item number 7.
It is requested an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to purchase one Stryker Power Load Cot System from Stryker Medical of Chicago, Illinois, for use in the fire department, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioner, having heard this ordinance, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Chief Green, can you give us just a brief outline of where we're spending this $25,000?
Yes, Commissioner President. What this loading system does is when we are ready to load the patients to the back of the squads, we connect our cots to this track system, and this track system supports the weight of the patient, and it basically it just assists us in loading the patient, and alleviates all the lifting and the twisting as we're trying to lift patients into the squad. So this significantly would reduce back injuries. We got statistical data that this system prevents that.
I've actually seen these devices in action, and they are truly remarkable. I understand why they cost that kind of money. They are almost like robotic. It is that it makes it that easy, and I agree with your synopsis, Chief, that anything that we can do to eliminate future workers' compensation claims from bad backs and twists and falls, I think it's probably money well spent. You do not settle workers' comp claims for anywhere near than the $25,000 we're spending on this cot. So I am completely supportive of buying equipment that makes our jobs easier and safer. Additional comments?
If I could just add something, this is our other two squads. One's at Station 3 and down here at the Central Fire Station. I already have those systems. This one's going into our ambulance out at Station 7.
So we're complete, in other words.
Yes.
Great. Additional comments, questions, Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I just going to add, this is great. Thanks, Chief Green, with all three ambulances. And this is a point where it's important to remember that our run volume in the city of Sandusky for EMS has more than doubled in just a short few years, and with less manpower. So this is a very important item that will keep people working and not injured, and cut back on overtime and those sorts of things. So it's a good investment.
Ms. Myers, you call a roll on the motion, please.
Yes. Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
That ordinance is passed. Ms. Myers, you present item number 8, please.
It is requested an ordinance be passed authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Reinhardt Walters Danner Insurance Agency of Mansfield, Ohio for property, casualty, and liability insurance for the period of December 1st, 2021 through November 30th, 2022, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Murray.
move for the adoption of this ordinance under Section 14 of the city's charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Murray.
tip of the hat really to the Finance Committee. We're looking here at a total premium on the order of $335,000. It was just a couple of years ago, if memory serves, that we were paying over $500,000 for liability insurance. We were part of a pool, a Borma pool, and it turned out to be not advantageous to us. It was advantageous to other communities who were in the pool, but we ended up paying a lot more than we should have. And there was a period of time not so long ago where the city was getting into an excessive number of lawsuits that were covered by our insurer, and the current administration, and by that I mean all the department heads, have done a good job of making sure that we make reasonable decisions, and where it's necessary to settle something, we settle it reasonably, as opposed to spending a lot of money on fees. The legal community loves it. You employ two sets of lawyers, but the insurance companies and the taxpayers aren't so crazy about it. So the Finance Committee pushed us in this direction, and the same with health insurance, which is the next item is related to that. They have collectively saved the taxpayers at this point millions of dollars because some shrewd decisions on their part. So thank you to the Finance Committee.
Mr. Murray, I recall that also a few years ago, and I recall your advocacy for moving in this direction and away from the consortium that we were in. I believe you characterized it very accurately then, in that we were drowning in that pool. And that was really the case, because now the savings cumulatively over years will literally equal millions of dollars. So I think it's a wonderful move by yourself and by the Finance Committee. Additional comments, Commissioners? Ms. Myers, will you call roll on the motion, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
That ordinance is passed. Ms. Myers, you present item number 9.
It is requested an ordinance be passed authorizing and approving a consulting agreement with Ashley Group, a One Digital company of Sandusky, Ohio, for consulting and brokerage services related to the city's health insurance plan, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Chairman,
Commissioner Meinzer.
I move for adoption of this ordinance under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
And a motion and a second discussion. Ms. Myers, will you call roll on the motion, please?
Yes. Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
That ordinance is passed. Ms. Myers, you present item number 10, please.
It is requested an ordinance be passed authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into a vehicle agreement with First Transit Incorporated of Cincinnati, Ohio, for the purpose of leasing 4 940 transit buses for the city transit system, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Harris.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Ms. Myers, will you call roll on that motion, please?
Yes. Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Brady,
Yes.
Ms. Twine,
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Waddington.
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer,
Yes.
Mr. Poole,
Yes.
Mr. Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Brady,
Yes.
Ms. Twine.
Yes.
That ordinance is passed. Concludes our regular agenda. We'll turn to our city manager for his report.
Thank you, Commission President Brady, Commissioners, audience, and staff. I'll start with the donations. A thank you to Rhonda Thorson and Thorworks for their generous donation to the Sandusky Police Department's outdoor range and training area. Thorworks resealed the blacktop at the range and painted the proper distances. I'd ask for a motion to accept that donation.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved. Hearing no objection, that motion is approved with our thanks to Thor Works.
Also, a thank you to the staff of Jack's Bar for their donation of $500 to the Sandusky Police Department's K-9 Fund. I'd ask for a motion to accept that donation as well.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved. Hearing no objection, that motion is approved with our thanks to Jack's Bar.
A thank you to Allison and Mike Will of San Marino Development Company for a donation of $500 for the purchase of holiday lights to adorn trees in Washington Park over the holidays. I'd ask for a motion to accept that donation.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved. And hearing no objection, that motion is approved with our thanks to Wills.
A donation from Brady Signs of a 30-inch two-sided City of Sandusky logo that city staff will secure to the existing Oakland Cemetery sign at the entrance on Milan Road. This donation totals $2,400. I'd ask for a motion to accept that donation.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Normally, I would do a voice vote on that, but because it's my obligation to abstain on that vote, I'm going to ask our clerk to call the roll on that motion.
Mr. Waddington.
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer,
Yes.
Mr. Poole,
Yes.
Mr. Murray,
Yes.
Ms. Twine.
Yes.
I abstain.
And on that one, I'm grateful for that because I've driven by that cemetery many times, and it is such a beautiful and historic cemetery, but there's no indication that even though it sits just outside of the city of Sandusky, it's a City of Sandusky facility, and so this logo will help with that, so we're grateful for it. And I'm thankful to the cemetery board and staff and Public Works for pushing that forward as well. Moving on to new and old business, starting with finance, the Regional Income Tax Agency, commonly referred to as RETA, has sent out 9 filer letters to taxpayers that they believe need to file a city income tax return. Taxpayers can simply e-file returns or exemptions on RETA's website at www.retaohio.com or mail or fax the necessary documents to RETA to comply with the tax filing requirement. Also, the first date of the 2022 budget is available on the city's website under the Finance Department page. Once final adjustments are made to the budget, it will be presented to the City Commission in December. For Public Works, various intersections along Wayne Street will be transitioning to 4-way stops on November 23rd. Inspired by the Walk Wayne initiative and the Bicentennial Vision Plan and resident feedback, these changes are meant to improve traffic flow and visibility for all motorists while also enhancing pedestrian safety within the south of Kilbourne Platte neighborhood. Additionally, citywide leaf collection will begin next Monday, November 15th. The drop-off area for bagged leaves is now open and located near the Marquette Drive entrance to the City Service Center. For questions about the city's leaf collection program, including a schedule of locations or guidelines for participation, please visit the city's website or call 419-627-5829. For economic development, construction plans and permit applications have been received for the redevelopment of the former Cardinal grocery store site into a modern food hall, cafe, and bar. Work at the site is expected to begin soon and be completed by summer of 2022. The developer of the project is currently accepting applications for food hall vendors through their website at www.sanduskyfoodhall.com. And then for planning meetings, Arts and Culture is scheduled for Tuesday, November 16th at 5:15. Landmark Commission is scheduled for Wednesday, November 17th at 5 p.m. Board of Zoning Appeals is scheduled for Thursday, November 18th at 4:30 p.m. And Planning Commission is scheduled for Wednesday, November 24th at 5 p.m. Finally, 2 items for recreation. The City of Sandusky is working with the Sandusky Community Celebrations Council on this year's holiday lighting ceremony in Washington Park. That event is scheduled for Friday, November 26th, with festivities starting at 6 p.m. And finally, registration is still open for the race before the game with Sandusky Rec, Cameo Pizza, Buckeye Broadband, and the United Way of Erie County on Saturday, November 27th at 8:30 a.m. Those looking to walk or run the event with the Big O Mile, Dot the I Script Ohio, or Block M courses can register at www.runsignup.com /.block2021. That concludes my remarks for this evening. I'm happy to take any questions or comments, and thank you.
Questions or comments for city manager? If not, we'll move to items of old business. Any items of old business? If not, we'll move to items of new business. Any items of new business?
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Harris.
Just a quick shout out to Jarvis Cole, the business instructor at Sandusky High School. A few of his students, three young lady streaks. They were actually named the New Business Professionals of America, and out of 6 regional officer positions, 3 of them were chosen. So I just wanted to give a shout out to them, and yeah, congratulations to those 3 young ladies.
Thank you. Additional items of new business, commissioners.
Mr. Brady.
Commissioner Murray.
Just thanks to all the candidates who ran. Got to know some of them much better than I did before, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed their contributions and their ideas, and I think it's the nature of elections that we have to listen. I'm sorry we were still in this COVID era and we didn't have more opportunities to get together. We just had one debate, but I appreciated that opportunity, and I listened to what the other candidates were saying, and I think it's incumbent on those of us who are in office to listen closely to what challengers are saying, and I think we will listen to that and make some changes as a result. Not wholesale changes, but incremental changes to be able to better address some of the concerns. The fact that there are some people in our community who are not participating in Sandusky's success or feel that they're not participating in Sandusky's success, that isn't good, and we need to address that. And most people are pretty darn happy with the city's direction, but we can do more, and we will do more. So thanks again for participating and for speaking up.
Additional items of new business, commissioners.
Oh, by the way, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to congratulate the true winner of last week's election, which would be Miss Naomi Twine. Exit stage left.
I wonder where you were going with that.
Shoot.
I'm pretty sure it wasn't me. Commissioner Waddington.
Mr. Murray, could you tell us about the Senate race, New Jersey, I believe, the truck driver?
Oh, yeah.
$154. I think it's hilarious. It just goes to show you a little soul work. I'm talking about your shoes.
Yeah.
Works. Door to door, and he knocked off somebody he was the head of the Senate, right?
Yeah, president of the Senate in New Jersey, and he got knocked off. That's right.
Stopped in donut shops, walked in factories, and to meet people. When I watched it in CNN, the first person I called was you.
Some people spend money on ads. Some people spend money on shoes. Yeah. You and Mr. Bajali being two that come to mind.
Hard work. As an item of new business, I have the obligation of setting a public hearing for a property at 1012 Columbus Avenue. Application to rezone the site from R2F to 2-family residential to RMF multifamily residential. I need to set that public hearing for December the 13th, and I'll need a motion to do that.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second discussion? That motion will be set. Second item of new business, I would ask for a motion to appoint Mr. Denny Muratori to the Records Commission Board. We have a vacancy on that very important board.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second discussion? Without objection, that motion will be approved. Hearing no objection, that motion is approved. Any additional items of new business, commissioners? If not, we will go to any residents that would like to provide a comment on any item affecting city business. I ask that you limit your comments to 5 minutes.
Okay, my name is Mike Osborne. I live on Cleveland Road. I'm right across the street from CTM Financial. I've owned the property for 6 years now. And just recently, the old Bayshore Counseling Building, it's a little strip plaza just east of the Sandusky Plaza. Started to get cleaned up last summer. Hedges got trimmed. property owner apparently started leasing out units. I don't know how it started, but I haven't seen any advertising for any new businesses opening, but I see people over there working. And I know everybody needs a fair chance to succeed, but a couple businesses moving to that building that it got pretty nasty there about a week ago. It was Saturday night, October 30th. I was sleeping. My girlfriend woke me up. She said, honey, it's getting kind of loud over there. It's like 2:30 in the morning. I looked out the window, and the cars just kept going in and out and around the building, and the music was shaking the windows, the thumping and banging going on. So I went ahead and called Erie County Dispatch, suspicious activity, because it's 2:30 in the morning. And they requested to send out a couple squads, which they did. They rode through the property, exited and left, and then within probably 5 minutes, a large crowd started to gather in one of the driveways, and it really started getting louder and louder. So I went ahead and called back. I said, I think you need to send somebody back out. It looks like all hell's about to break loose. That's how I said it. And she said, okay, we'll send somebody. And as soon as I hung up the phone, I heard the first gunshot. I yelled at my girlfriend, get down, and she got down on the floor, and then 7 more gunshots rang out. And this is right across the street. And this crowd was coming down the driveway of the business right towards the street. It scared the piss out of me, to be blunt. I mean, I was on the floor crawling, and I was telling her to crawl to the back of the house. She was crawling to the back of the house, and I was crawling across the living room to check on my dog on the couch to make sure a bullet didn't come through the house. And I think, you know, I'd like to be known so it can be looked into as to who's in here. When I leave for work, I leave early in the morning. I've been gainfully employed at CERN-T for 33 years, and I like the city. I like the direction it's going in. I've been here in the bad times, and I see the revival. I know Mr. Hogarty. Years ago, his father was an instructor at the Rifle Club at Erie County Conservation Club, so I know that family too, and I see the good direction in the cities, and I see the unity in this commission, which is very impressive. I like that. But it shook me.
We take those incidents very seriously, and your comments are not falling on deaf ears. We will, those comments will be shared with Chief Oliver.
Okay.
And
he's aware of the situation.
Yeah, he certainly is aware of it, and I will ask him to respond directly to you as to what methods and operations we are taking.
Get a response from his assistant officer. I got a call back that they were aware of the situation.
Okay.
I had 2 reports. There was an incident that happened about 6 weeks prior, same kind of thing, Saturday night, late at night, and it was my neighbor 2 doors down. This is a younger fellow with about 3 or 4 kids, young little ones. So he's very concerned too. I mean, it's all working class people on that street, all good neighbors.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Meisner.
when you first stepped up during the agenda items, did you mention it's residential to people? You think people are living in it?
Yeah, I wanted to ask.
24/7.
Enforcement could check
So
into
I
that.
think just besides the police,
Code Department.
I think code, fire.
Yes.
Everybody should lock down on this zoning.
It's an
Everybody
L-shaped
should get
building.
together. And there's a similar place on that I've received complaints on Butler and 250. There's a used car dealership there that people feel that people are living in. So those type of facilities are not zone residential, and they should not be people living.
So what I did find out, because the mailman that delivers the mail is a member of my church. So one day he showed up and said, hey, I got a question for you. And I said, are you delivering mail over here? And he said, yeah. I said, you know, what kind of, and he said, in the back, it's an L-shaped unit. That back part of the L shape, it runs like east and west in the back. Yeah. And then there's the old pediatrics building behind that. The L-shaped part, it's like they split it in half and they're recording studios.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, like I said, I believe everybody's got a fair chance, but when that starts to go on that time in the morning, and I walked out, they were picking up the shell casings after the crowd scattered out of there. I was like, wow.
Chief Oliver, it looks to me like you may want, I'm not trying to put you on the spot with this, but it looks like you may want to respond.
You know, it's okay, sir. Through you, Commission President, just so everybody's aware, that this was late Saturday night, early Sunday morning on Halloween. By Monday, we identified the owner of the building now. We know who he was subleasing to. I don't believe there was any activity there this past weekend. I could be incorrect. That's because we reached out bright and early that Monday morning, located who we think is responsible for a few things. Now, obviously, we got some items of evidence, and that's a criminal investigation. We'll handle that, but we wanted to make sure there wasn't an ongoing issue, and I think we're close to resolving that for you, sir. The only reason I didn't call you back, sir, I was out of the office, so hopefully my lieutenant contacted you right away.
He did. I appreciate it, too. I do.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief. I think you see, that we,
Yes,
the
yes.
commission and the chief take this very
Yes,
seriously.
I appreciate your help.
You'll get follow-up, and we will stay on it.
Thank you very
And
much.
Commissioner Meinzer has an excellent point. Let's look at every aspect. Let's look at code, let's look at fire, let's look at everything. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Waddington, and I met you down there a few years back when they rebuilt on the corner of Erie Boulevard, and
Oh, yeah.
I see the kids hang out down there now, during the day, and that was a great project. Yeah, it was really good. I do appreciate and see the direction of the city. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Additional public comments? If there are none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
You're adjourned.